ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Ali Show. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Eugene Bareman, here at the Bareman Residences. And together with our friend, the Godzilla here as well, which is, I believe, is a gift from Israel. Is that correct?
I think Israel gave that to, one of my children, Kai. So
yeah. The head was a little bit loose, but we managed to put that together. So yeah, we had to showcase a little bit of Israel's gift. Eugene, how are you?
I'm good today. Yeah, today's a good day. Saturday's, Saturday's sparring day, and then once you get that out of the way, then you can enjoy your day. So,
Eugene, so probably I think most of our viewers probably already know who you are, but there might be the odd few who don't. Could you just give us like a brief introduction about yourself? How would you put that in words?
I'm just a guy who owns a gym, and I've owned a gym for a very long time, and I've been lucky enough, and I've created my own luck, and I've hooked up with the right people around me, and I'm lucky enough that the gym has found a lot of success in recent times. And that's who I am. I'm just a guy who owns a gym, who puts himself inside the gym and works, and that's it.
So CIty Kickboxing, how long has the gym been running, Eugene?
2007, I think. Maybe 2006, 2007.
Oh, so that's been about close to 14 years.
Yeah.
That is a wee while.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been taking up the better part of my life, to be honest, up till now. So, yeah.
It's a wee while. I usually try not to ask repeat questions, and I've listened to a few of your podcasts that you've done, questions that people have asked you previously. I don't want to dwell too much a little bit on the story of how you got into martial arts. If you could just like wrap it up, a short kind of summary.
Yeah, easy. I mean, I used to play rugby, and I got frustrated with rugby, and I wanted to. So I left that sport, and I needed another sport. So I like martial arts, and for one or another reason, I thought kickboxing or Thai boxing would be a good fit. And that's when I walked into Master Lolo's gym, and I was lucky to walk into his gym because I that was a perfect start for me in the sport, being with such a great coach. And from there, I just fell in love with the sport, and I became like a what they call like a lifer.
What was it about the sport that really attracted you? Was it the physical side of it?
I like the physical side of it, but I like the soul responsibility side of it. Is that my destination was almost completely, by the time I hit the ring or the cage or whatever, well, my destination was, it was solely in my hands. I was completely self-determined by me and my actions and my dedication and my hard work or lack of. And that's what I liked about it, that I was solely responsible for the outcome of the work that I put into it. So that's what I liked about it.
Wow. I understand you have had a total of, before we get into the coaching side of things, as a fighter, you've actually had 48 professional fights. Is that correct?
Yep.
So I have to ask the question again now. You've always had the plans of making it to 50. What's the update on that?
Fuck, I'm trying,
Big
brother.
50.
I'm trying. I'm going through a patch right now where I'm just trying to find myself again, like trying to find that. I'm trying to find that switch. I'm looking for it. I'm looking for that flame or that switch. I'm just trying to turn it on. It's that switch that. It's so easy when you're young and you have less obligations and less commitments. It's so easy to turn that switch on. One year I had like 7 or 8 fights in a year. I turned that switch on 8 times, But I'm just trying to find that switch, find that motivation. I just need to do some soul searching, and I think deep down I know I want to, I know I want to jump in there again. I just have to find it within myself. That's all.
Maybe a little bit of meditation and
Yeah,
might help.
I don't know. I'm not big on all that stuff, but I also do believe that if it happens, it has to happen organically. Like it just has to, like, all of a sudden it will just something will trigger something, and then one thing leads to another, and then there you have it.
Hey you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Would you say, I mean, with the success of the gym, the number of professional fighters fighting on different promotions, across like UFC, and then you have someone who's fighting on Brave and the local shows and all that. There's quite a few fighters that you committed to. Would that be like a barrier or like a bit more friction for you to get that time for your own training?
Look, that can be an obstacle if I make it an obstacle. That's the thing. That's the thing that people got to understand. Like, like I get fighters a lot, and they're waiting for the perfect circumstances to fight. Oh no, my girlfriend's not happy with me right now, or my things aren't going well at my job. Let me wait for that to calm down. But that's not the reality of the world. Like, unless you're living in a bubble, we live in constant chaos to different degrees. And if you're waiting for the perfect environment for everything to be like perfect for you to fight and stuff, you're never going to fight. So it's actually what you make of it. It's how you pull yourself together. It doesn't matter what you're going through. So like, you can't use things like that as an excuse. You can't use my missus aren't happy, I'm fighting with my missus, I'm in between jobs. When I'm asking someone to fight or have a fight, or they want to fight, but they're saying all those things, for me, that's always someone like, straight away, I'm like, you don't want to fight, because you're always going to be going through those things throughout your life. If you want to fight, then you're going to work through all that adversity, and you're just going to fight. So now I'm not using any of that as an excuse.
Oh, that's awesome. Just want to jump back a little bit into back in 2006 and 2007 when you started CIty Kickboxing with the Doug Viney. Is that correct? Both of you went on to start the gym.
Yeah. Have you done one Doug Viney podcast? Has he been on?
No, not yet. But
Okay.
I don't know if he's really into doing the podcast.
I'll talk to him.
But
I think people are sick of, the journey of the gym is not just my journey. It's the journey of both of us. And he's got an important side of the story to tell, a very interesting side of the story. And it needs to be out there. I think people will be very interested in it.
Yeah, I've got bit and pieces of his story, but it's not my story to tell, so that's why I don't really want to
Nah, let's get him on.
Yeah, definitely, he'll be someone that we would like to have on. So 14 years of running the business. Not only running a martial arts gym, but at the end of the day, it is a business. What has been like some of the biggest challenges or the biggest struggles has been for you? From what I understand, the first couple of years that you actually did run the gym, it wasn't making a lot of money, or
first 5 or 6 years, brother, like maybe even 7 or 8. Yeah, I mean, the challenges are the obvious ones, like just coming from never running a business to running a small business, and coming from a place where you had no obligations at all, and then all of a sudden you've got leases and power and all rent and all the rest of it. Yeah, it was all a massive challenge. And when I look back at some of the years that we started this gym, I can't piece together how we got through like a year that we struggled in or stuff. But we just big stealed and borrowed and just put our head down and just kept working, to be honest. But there were some pretty there were some pretty lean years back then, but like I always say, like, if you're passionate about it, you don't care. You know, one thing about going to that gym every day way back then is it didn't feel like I was going to work. It always felt like it was I was going to somewhere where I was really enthusiastic to be. So even though it can get to you that you're not making enough money and you're not providing for your family, I always used to think at least I'm doing something that I want to do. I could be in worse circumstances right now. So that's what kept driving me, that I just loved doing it. And that's why I just kept at it, even though there were those lean times.
Also, the one of the things was one of the reasons I would say was when you started it. It was like for you and Doug was a space for you to be able to train and fight professionally as well. So kind of the would you say the earnings from like the fights that you guys did kind of went back into the gym?
Yeah, well, yeah, and the other thing is that especially at the level that I was on a local level, you didn't really earn that much, so there wasn't much room there. Doug and a lot more than me. But yeah, some of a lot of money had to go back into the gym. And like it didn't work out. Like in hindsight, like sometimes you just have to look at it and you just have to face that fact that our intention, which was to open the gym so we had a space to train and further our careers, that our original intention, that may have been our original intention, but that completely didn't work out at all. I mean, I wouldn't change anything at all because I wouldn't be in the position I am now. But if it was solely, if I look back now and I if I was solely just thinking about my own progression as a fighter, just thinking about me by myself, not thinking about all the things that have happened and all the people that have helped be affected by have been affected by CIty Kickboxing for my own career, I would have, if I could change it, I would have just stayed in my gym at Balmoral
with Lolo,
and probably just kept training. That would have been, in hindsight, probably a far better way to progress my career. That's easy to say now, though. At the time, I had other ideas.
Yeah. So along the way, running the gym, when was it you? Because I don't know if people do understand, but there are actually like a team of coaches at CIty Kickboxing now. At which stage did you realize that you had to increase the numbers of coaches and in their respective fields?
Almost straight away. I started recruiting coaches straight away to obviously help train myself. But then when the very beginnings, when the fight team started when more and more fighters came, I almost started recruiting straight away. And I was very cunning about it, the way I did it, to be honest. And I hope these guys don't hold it against me, but guys like Chanel Neomata, who was a great fighter and a really great coach, a very smart coach. Diesel, Ivan, Muni, I would invite them to the gym to train. But I knew if I could get them training in the gym, that eventually they would feel the urge to start holding pads and start coaching. start coaching people.
Yeah.
So I was like, just come into the gym and then
just
work
train
out
together.
Yeah, work out for a bit. It'll be just like old times. But I knew that those guys had a bit of a passion like I did, and I knew eventually that they would start coaching. And I knew which guys from back in Lolo's gym, I knew which guys had really fought deeply about the sport, who peeled back the layers of the sport in similar fashion to I did. So I was like, those are the guys that I need to try and attract to the gym.
Yeah.
Because those guys can enhance the gym, enhance the fight team, and those guys can add to my knowledge and, Mike Ango. So, yeah, for a lot of those guys, it started as me giving them a free membership. Come and train and stuff. And then a lot of those guys, they're still part of the gym to this day. So I'm very thankful for them. But that's I knew straight away that I would need some help.
Yeah, it's I mean, the team of coaches at CIty Kickboxing, you guys have a very tight knit sort of relationship, brotherhood. You could call it that. And like with a lot of other places, you'd see people really struggle to have, especially in a sport like this where there's a lot of ego involved. There's along those lines. How is it you manage to keep everybody like on that smooth sailing
Well,
kind
you're right. Like I've seen some crazy individuals in the sport and some crazy coaches, but it's also it's kind of what makes the sport what it is that you get these very unique characters and you get their egos and you get everything that comes with it, and it's kind of enjoyable to have it. And it's just happens to be the kind of sport that attracts those sort of people. But I think where our team of coaches and why we've been able to make it work so well is because we grew up in the sport together. And we all fought together, and we've known each other for close to 2 decades. Some of the boys have known each other for a lot longer than even I have, and we were all fighters together, and we grew up together, and we know each other we know each other so intimately. And when you have that sort of relationship with someone, it's kind of like having your brother like side by side with you, as opposed to I'm a trainer at a gym and I've got 3 other trainers and I don't know their background, I don't know where they've come from, and I don't know their base of knowledge. They haven't came from the same school. I know nothing about them. This is different. We know each other intimately, we know each other's style, we know how we coach, we know how each other's personality, and we're able to like adjust our coaching style and adjust our relationships within the gym to suit that. I think that's the advantage that our coaching team has, is that we've been together for years and we have years and years of experience as fighters and coaches, and we're able to successfully kind of remove our egos from the environment so that we can benefit from everybody working together.
On that topic of still being a fighter and a coach, can I ask you, which would you say in your 48 fight would have been the most memorable one for you?
As a fighter or as a coach?
As a fighter first. We'll go on that one. And why was it?
One of my favorite fights was a very early fight I had with Lolo Heimuli, and there was some subtle things that went on in the fight, but anyway, my opponent a few weeks before that had fought another guy and had very strong leg kicks. I hadn't noticed this at the time.
This one was just a Muay Thai, full Muay Thai.
Yeah. Like it was like my 5th fight or something. And this guy was much heavier than me. He was he was a ETK guy, and Lolo must have, in his memory, seen this guy fight. So we started the fight, and Lolo said to me, one of the first things he said to me before the fight, before I walked out and stuff, was like, "This guy's gonna come out and kick your legs and stuff. I want you to like just make sure you check the first kick with your knee, and then you won't have to deal with his kick. You'll take that weapon away. You won't kick you again for the rest of the fight." And then I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, if you say so, I don't know how you know that, but yeah, okay, I'll do that." We start fighting. There's quite a big weight discrepancy, and I could tell he had big, strong kicks. And then
what was that weight at that time? Or
I think I was like 85, but I probably should have been fighting at 80, and then he ended up coming down to 85 and was probably like 90 by the time we fought.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it's like, but yeah, so then he comes out, and sure enough, he just looks straight down at my leg and just goes to kick it. And I did exactly what Lolo said. I lift up to check and try to aim my knee right at his shin, and his shin hit my knee straight away.
Oh.
And then you just saw straight away, I just knew what was going on. Like, I just knew he was so hurt from that.
Oh my.
And for the rest of that fight, he barely threw a kick,
Oh
which was
wow.
so we immediately took away one of his main weapons, and then it was just a kind of a uphill battle for the other guy from there because we'd taken away his main weapon, and then I went on to win that fight.
Wow.
And that's just memorable because from that point on, I understood how important it is to have a good coach and a good cornerman and someone that knows what they're doing. And yeah, so that's why that fight is particularly memorable for me.
Wow. That's it's really interesting because we've done the podcast with Lolo Heimuli, and I don't know if you watched the clip that I actually did a podcast with Lolo the day before UFC 253.
Okay.
And so I actually went on and asked Lolo to give me a prediction or sort of a breakdown of how the fight is gonna go. And he gave me I'll show you the clip later, but I think you might not have seen it, but I'll show you the clip later. He said word for word whatever that Izzy did in that fight.
Okay.
So he kind of predicted like on point.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, you know, I spoke to a lot of people, and you know, they tell me as well, like the way that Lolo kind of thinks, kind of like he's passed on a lot of that to you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like that. I think that can't be helped. Like I was training with him, and I was paying attention to what he did and everything he did for a lot of years. Like a lot of small details that no one else ever pays attention to. I was paying attention to right throughout. Not without any intention that I thought I'd be a coach, but I was doing that because I wanted to be the best fighter I could. And I thought if I understood the coaching side of it, then it would enhance me as a fighter. I mean, I remember asking Lolo very early on, hey, do you mind if I come and stand in a corner with you and help corner some of the guys with you? And I didn't had a handful of fights. And he let me, and I was surprised. I was like, yeah. And then that's when I really started to probe a lot more into that side of things. And I had no intention of being a coach. That was for my own benefit because, like I said, I knew that if I could understand every aspect of the sport, whether it be the physical training, the mental side, what goes on in the corner, I could be a better fighter. So yeah, I mean that just goes without saying that I definitely, my base of knowledge comes from whatever he taught me. That was my first ever coach.
It's very interesting you were talking about, you know, being in that corner. One of the things that I picked up from looking at you corner a lot of people is the way you give instructions in between rounds. And you are one of the coaches, or one of the very few coaches that actually goes really close and you sort of whisper the instructions. And like on almost a lot of the UFC fights as well, they try to get like really close to you to try to hear what you're saying, and they don't get anything. Is there a particular reason, or is that like a tactic?
Well, to be honest, it's not really, because whatever's happening, there's no way of it getting to the other corner or the other coach anyway, but it's just habit. Like I think. Hey,
you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.
For no particular reason, really, because when you think about it, the other coaches can't hear me, but that minute is for me and the fighter. Like it's a special minute. It's a private minute. It's not for the world to experience. It's for me in the corner, whether it be Tristram or Mike Andre. That's something very intimate and very private that's going on in that minute. And that's kind of how I see it. So I kind of like, my propensity is to keep it that way. So I kind of whisper. And also sometimes whispering is a way of emphasizing something, because when you whisper to someone, what the signal that you're sending them is that it's a very important message that you don't want anybody else to hear. And when you whisper it into someone's ear, trust me, whenever you whisper into someone's ear, they're going to pay attention. They're going to know, oh, this guy's about saying something very important. every neuron in your brain is going to be saying to yourself, this is something that's going to be very important coming out of your mouth, out of this person's mouth, and you're going to remember it, and it's going to sink into your head in a different way. That's the response you get from when you whisper in someone's ear. So sometimes it's just an effective way to give instructions, as well as it being just a private moment that the world doesn't need to share in, to be honest.
Wow, it's good to actually finally hear the reason behind it, because that has always intrigued me. I don't know why, but it has been something that I picked up. I like to look at things, and I like to pick up small little things.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that really intrigued me. But anyway, so as a coach now, what would you say would have been the most memorable experience as a coach?
So when you give a question to me like that, I think about the question, and it's for me, the obvious answer is the first thing that pops into my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing that popped into my head was when I was like earlier on in my coaching career, just then, and I had a girl called Justine, a dear old friend of mine who actually worked with me and Doug at the gym and helped us like do all the admin and stuff. But she had a fight.
And did you guys kind of rope her into getting into a fight?
Nah, she wanted to do it. Like it was something she wanted to tick off her bucket list. She only had one fight, and we took her down to Tauranga, and we're just about to walk out, and it's a big thing. She's trained hard and everything, and she's got an opponent, a big fight night down in Tauranga. Some of the rural fight nights are the big ones because nothing else to do. They all come out.
The support for it is it's quite overwhelming.
It's crazy in the small towns. Yeah, it's crazy. But so we've warmed her up, and she's getting ready to go out, and she's like, excuse me, she's got all the usual nerves. And then they're just about to call her name out. So the announcer's about to call her name out, and she has a full-blown panic anxiety attack. Full-blown anxiety attack, and she completely breaks down, and she can't breathe. She's like hyperventilating, and she can't breathe. And me and Doug at this time we're a little bit inexperienced, especially when in this sort of thing.
It's the first time it's
happened. And by now they've announced her name, and she's on the floor having a full groan, like, I can't breathe. What do I do? And she can't talk properly. We quickly do our best to calm her down and stuff, and we get her mind into a reasonable enough state where she can walk out there. And she walks out there, and she fights, and she's spectacular.
Wow.
Like she wins her fight. And then she finishes the fight, and then it's just amazing when you have someone finish their first fight. Like that feeling, that of accomplishment, you just oozes through them, and you can just see it on their face. And with her, it was so blatant, it was so obvious. Like she was overwhelmed with accomplishment and just happiness.
Especially after going through something like that.
Because of that. So yeah, funnily enough, that's the first thing that came into my memory. And then obviously, like I've got so many highlights. Especially in recent times. Those are the obvious ones. But I always, when someone asks me a question like that, I always like to not disregard some of the memories that were a lot smaller in scale, but were just as important, like that I had early in my career.
Had a very big impact.
Had very big impact back then, but maybe not as big an impact to the world around me, maybe.
But you'd say, it had such an impact, and it kind of shaped you to be the person that you are today.
Yeah, 100%. And I've got a whole host of memories and experiences like that.
Yeah.
That are just as fond to me as Israel giving me the bout in the middle of the cage at Melbourne Atlanta, etc. So, I mean, we literally could be for hours talking about all of those.
Yeah. Like Lolo said, if I have 2 weeks, he could probably tell me all this.
I mean, he's been in the sport, double or triple the amount of time that I have. So he would need 2 weeks.
How's it feeling, Eugene? Being in that cage there, having Israel winning the interim title, and then the middleweight championship, and I think Melbourne was like probably the biggest event in UFC history. Having that amount of people, how did that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, without trying to sound too cliche, it's just mind blowing. Like, you got to pinch yourself because you can't believe. It's funny because you set these goals and you set these tasks, but I don't know. I think there's a part of you that you set the goal, but you actually don't think you're ever going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, you're striving for it and you're pushing as hard as you can for it. And you believe you can do it, but there's a certain section of your brain that just can't fathom it. And then when it happens, I think that section in your brain kind of like it says something to you. It like erases, it removes itself from and I think that's the part where you got to pinch yourself and you realize, wow, I can't believe
we're here.
We're here, and we've done this from. Especially from from the humble beginnings that we came from. So it's a little cliche, but it's actually the best description of it. Like, it's mind blowing.
And also from a country where there are a lot of people who don't even know where New Zealand is. There are still people up to this day who, when you tell them you're from New Zealand, and it's like, where's that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean that just makes it all the more better.
So you've obviously traveled and cornered a lot of fights. Have you ever actually kept track of how many countries you've actually been to?
I have actually, I've contemplated. Sometimes I walk, like if I'm with the family and I walk through a mall, I look for one of those world maps.
The scratch maps.
That you can put the pins on
to
pins. Show each destination you've been. But it's a stupid amount. Like, I wouldn't want to remember. I've got a little thing there where I've kept a lot. I haven't kept all of them, but I've kept like probably 2/3 or 3/4 of the tickets that I've ever been.
Wow.
It's like a stack like that.
Oh my goodness.
It's like hundreds of tickets. With all sorts I've been to. But I mean, that's kind of one of the nice things about the sport, and the not so nice things. It's good you get to travel and you get to experience for a short while some other cultures and see the world a little bit. Not all of us are afforded that privilege, but also it's one of the things I don't like about the sport is like it's a lot of time away from family and time away from other obligations. And sometimes it's hard to get a flow on if you're trying to accomplish something or trying to accomplish a task back here. But
and also like having to going on flights and even long distance flights, like back and forth, it actually really affects your body as well. Like,
I tell you something. My sister is the head of women's world soccer, and FIFA restrict the amount of flying time she can have in a year.
Yeah.
And I was like, when she was telling me about that, I was like, are you serious? I was like, are you telling me that if you fly too much, there's some sort of adverse effect to doing that? And then she kind of ummed and ahed, but obviously there is, or they wouldn't restrict the amount of flying time she has in a year. So
especially for females.
Yeah, obviously if you fly too much, if you're in altitude too much, obviously there's some sort of long-term health. It affects your long-term health in some sort of way, which is interesting because I've never known that. I've just flown everywhere. Like sometimes I spend the whole year in the air,
Yeah, just keep flying.
Yeah, but no one's telling me that I should restrict my flying time. But when she works for this multi-billion-dollar company, then they're restricting her flying. So it was interesting.
And also I've actually heard you say before, but the difference between you and her flying is you're sitting in economy and she's sitting in business class.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, economy's the humble life. It's
Yeah,
humble life.
It is.
I fly so much, so I get the odd upgrade.
Yeah,
and
you get the points. You accumulate the points, and
get the points, and I get treated well by the airline. But if you're with the champ, then you're always flying a different class. But
would you say there has been like a sort of the difference in the treatment that you've got recently from like just the general public, the airlines, or like has there been like a better sort of better treatment or
nah, not really. I think it's just the same. I think there's the obvious things. Like obviously, if I go out now, I get recognized a lot. But I'm not hating on that. I'm not happy about it. Like I'm not like get a big ego because people recognize me. But what I'm happy about is if they're recognizing me, they're following the sport that I love,
worked so hard for
all my life to promote get it to this point. And if they're seeing me, if they're seeing the fighters, and they're like, oh wow, if they're getting this, my fighters are getting the same recognition as like an All Black and stuff, then that's what I've like, that's what I set out to accomplish from day one, to elevate the sport to where the greatness to the place where I thought it should be, and that's what I like about it. Yeah, it does. Like, there's the obvious things that get annoying and stuff, but if you just put a positive spin on it, it can be good for you.
It sort of works in your favor. Talking about like traveling and all that, off the back of your mind, like where has been like the most interesting place you've been to, country or location you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite place to go to is
favorite probably
is and one of the most interesting is Tahiti. We as you know, I have a lot of Tahitian fighters at the gym, boxers, kickboxers, MMA, and that culture and that island, all those islands, is just amazing. It's just a beautiful place with beautiful people, and I always find it strange how they're all like climbing over the fence to come here. It's like, why are you coming here? Like, you guys literally come from paradise.
Yeah.
Go back to where you're from. But with obviously they live there, it's a little bit different, and they have goals and they want to accomplish things and fight sports, and they say the best place to be is Auckland. But nevertheless, if I could spend more time in Tahiti, I definitely would.
Would you say it'll be hopefully after this whole pandemic kind of settles down, might be a trip for you and your family?
Yeah.
Over to Tahiti.
Yeah, I would. Man, I would love that. I would love for this world to be normal again, so we can all travel again and experience some of the
it's crazy times.
Places. Yeah.
And obviously, talking about on the topic of like traveling and all that, this year has been definitely a hard year with the whole pandemic and everything. But not only that, with the UFC pushing for the fights to go on, and you guys have had 2 or 3 so far now events, and you've actually flown out twice and spent a total of 4 weeks more in quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I can't complain. I want to see the country safe. I want to see lives saved. I don't want to see COVID-19. So I'm 100% for anything that helps keep COVID-19 out of the country and helps keep people safe. So I'm not going to complain. What I will say is that quarantine is a very difficult thing, mentally, and it's amazing because you're not. I wasn't aware of the mental challenge of being in that isolation and stuff. I wasn't aware of it. I thought it would be something that I would find very easy, considering that I think myself like to be quite a mentally strong person that doesn't let much affect them. But admittedly, that second one, I'm not going to say I like struggled like a lot of people did, but I definitely felt it.
The impact of being in an enclosed area.
In an enclosed area and not being around people and not being and being away from your family.
As well.
I definitely felt it on that trip. So
yeah, talking about family, you're quite a family man. You have a few children.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things that a lot of people neglect is of all the awards that you've got, I think your partner probably deserves an award too.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have done any of this without her. I think behind every good man to good woman, like you have to have a good relationship to be in a sport like this. It's one of my key recommendations to young fighters, to be honest, is don't have a girlfriend or don't have a partner, and if you have one, make sure it's the right one. Make sure one that it's 100% behind you, 100% loyal to you, and will 100% back you no matter what. I think that's one of the key things, because as much as I don't try to pry into people's life outside of the gym, the fact of the matter is that fighting is such a all-encompassing sport. You have to have, all your T's crossed and all your I's dotted. You have to have everything in your life at a nice, reasonable, calm level. It's never going to be perfect, okay?
Yeah.
But you're going to have everything at a reasonable, calm level. And relationships are a big part of that. And when you have a fighter's life in the right place, what I've experienced over the years is that their fighting is in the right place as well. And that's just something that that I've seen through experience, and something that you can't get away from. So yeah, it is a big part of it to have the right partner.
So talking about like that, having the right partner who is behind you, did you get together with your partner before you started fighting, or
yeah
before?
Yeah. And that doesn't particularly matter. Like you can meet someone after, but I mean, I've seen, it's hard, man. Like honestly, it's hard for these young guys to find a partner that understands the sport, because most girls do not. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And without trying to sound like a chauvinist, but honestly, they have no idea. They don't have any idea. I've seen girls, like say to guys like, "Oh, you've been to training 3 times this week already. Like, I think it's time that you spend the next 2 nights at home." It's like, it's like, that's like, for a fighter, like it's unfathomable. It's like, I don't give 2 damns how many nights I've been away at the gym. I've got a fight in 6 weeks later. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't just, like, because I've been at the gym twice, say all of a sudden decide I'm going to have a night off. Like, that's just not how the sport works.
Yeah.
And it's not these girls' fault. They just have no idea of the level of commitment and what's at stake in a fight. Like, they're just clueless.
What is required?
What is required and what's at stake. How you can get hurt if you don't train properly. And it's hard to make people understand that aren't inside the sport what the requirements are. And that's why it's hard. That's why it's a massive reoccurring problem with guys and girls who are fighters, is finding a partner that can understand the needs of the sport. All this work, all this commitment for little to no money.
Yeah.
And a lot of time away from your relationship. But one good thing about it is when you do find the right person and they've come through all of that, then that's the test, right? If they're standing by you through all of your career and all of that, and they're willing to do that, then you've found someone who's...
And probably those who would stand by you throughout that whole time probably deserve to be with you if you get to a certain level.
100%. So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those reoccurring themes that I've seen for the last 20 years. Sometimes partners and fighters, and trying to find partners and girlfriends and boyfriends is a very difficult.
Yeah, which is why they always say that it is, combat sports and fighting, it's a very lonely sport, because most of the time, fighters commit like all their time training and,
Yeah, and it's not, they just don't have a choice. Like, and that's what a lot of...
there's so much at stake.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of partners just who come from outside of the sport, they just don't understand that. So it's hard for them to get their head around it. Somehow they see that as somehow this person neglecting them or something like that. But it's just not true. Like,
yeah. Another topic that I'd like to talk about is the history behind you and Israel. So it was quite an interesting story, how you guys met, the first fight that you cornered for him, and then moving on, him coming back, you actually, telling him to try some other gyms before training with you again. So all in all, like, there's a story in itself. So if you guys, Eugene has actually said that in a few other podcasts. I might put the links of those so you can listen to those stories. But what I want to ask is, like, at which point, so after he started training with you, at which point did you realize that Israel was different, or did you see that there was something different about him?
His first fight with us, straight away, I'd had pads for him and stuff and trained him for the fight, but when I'd never seen him fight, and when he had, except for that one MMA fight, which I was cornering him in, which he didn't do well. So it was the first fight he had for the gym. And he was, I think that fight's on video on YouTube, but he was very he was very raw, like he was very rough. There wasn't like a hell of a lot of technique, and there wasn't a hell of a lot of structure to what he was doing, and he didn't know why he was doing most of the things he was doing. But you could see the natural talent, you could see the natural flair, and you could see some of the natural physicality that he had. And that's when I first had an inkling that he could be a really good combat sports athlete. But I was also in the game long enough at that point to know that people like that come through the door all the time, and it doesn't mean nothing. It means absolutely zilch. How much physical talent you've got, how much athleticism means nothing. If you don't have anything mentally, it all amounts to nothing. And that's what took me longer to learn about him, and that's what to be honest, I had to go about teaching him some of that, because just sometimes that doesn't all come naturally. Like, you have to learn, and you have to teach it, and he had to learn about it, and he had to teach it. He's a guy that introspects a lot and watches other fighters and talks about mindset and pulls stuff from other fighters and brings into his own mindset. That was stuff we had to learn and develop.
I see. It's pretty interesting. So fast forward to, how long has it been since you first came across paths with Israel?
I need to
9-10 years, maybe?
I don't know. I need to find the answer to that question. I honestly, several people have asked me that. I just don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to say.
Hey, you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. It's definitely been a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about, like, where he has got to now, and so just touch a little bit on that, with currently what he's doing and what the or your side of what the team thinks is like the next step for him. Was it kind of your so he obviously, it's been announced that he will move up to 205 and fight for the light heavyweight title. Was it your idea, the team's idea, or was it just something that he wanted?
Look, I'm going to say that as soon as Jan won it, that idea, I was already watching that fight to see who won it. And I thought that if Blachowicz won it, I thought that style that Blachowicz has would be a really good style for Israel's style. And so I wasn't paying attention to it because I had a lot to deal with myself. But and leading up to that fight, I was thinking to myself, "Oh, this is going to be a very interesting fight." And if Jan won it, that could be good for us. So I already had the idea planted in my head, but not really. Didn't put it out there or anything. So when he won, for me, it was very encouraging. I was like, "There's an idea though, but I've got to deal with the fight I've got on my hands now, which was Costa." And then obviously the Costa fight went really well, and
it was sorry to interrupt, but that was an amazing fight. That was an excellent plan that you guys had in place.
Yeah,
perfectly executed, minimal damage.
The fight went well. The fight couldn't have gone any better. But with the Jan fight going the way it went, and the Israel fight going the way it went, that kind of led me to my initial thought was that could be a very real possibility. And so I think the next day, me and the team got together, the managers, which is shout out to Ash James and Tim Simpson, best managers in the world at the moment. We started to talk about it, and then we went and talked to the matchmaker, and the UFC showed some interest in it. So
what's pretty interesting is I think just yesterday or 2 days ago, because Israel actually went on the Ariel Helwani show, and right after him was Jan. And what was interesting was what Jan was saying, that he believes that he is a tougher fight for Israel compared to John Jones. What is your thoughts on that?
That's to be honest, it's a difficult question, but
definitely
where Jan, look, I will in any way completely, let's remove any thought that we think that this is going to be an easy fight, and that's why we took it. 100%. That's not the reason we took it.
Definitely.
We took it because we see certain things that we can take advantage of, and and for us they're glaringly obvious. More glaringly obvious than if like Rios had won it or someone else had won it. Okay. The other reason we took it because there's certain things that we see that Blachowicz does, which he either does to the same level or to similar degrees that Jones does. I don't want to get wrapped up in saying that we're taking this fight as a lead into the Jones fight, but as a coach, before we fight John Jones, and I don't know who's the better fighter out of Blachowicz and John Jones. I don't know.
Because it hasn't happened, so we can't really tell.
But Jones has the pedigree on paper at the moment that clearly looks like he is by far the better fighter than Blachowicz. If in a perfect scenario, I could have a fight at 205 before I fought someone with the pedigree of John Jones. If I could have a fight before we fought John Jones at 205, which is never normally afforded to another champion who's going up in weight. When have you ever seen another champion go up in weight in MMA and have like a fight before they fought the champion? You get matched up with the champion. You go up a weight, you get matched up with the champion straight away. You don't get a chance to adjust to the weight. You don't get like a dry run. You're straight in there, right? If this opportunity can be afforded to us to have this one fight at 205, even though it's not actually, it wouldn't be a warm-up fight. We're fighting for the title. But to have one run at 205 before we fought John Jones, from a coaching perspective, perfect. In boxing, that's what happens. You go up in weight. In boxing, they do it a bit differently. Obviously, you fight two guys who you're definitely meant to beat.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is they're adjusting to the weight, they're adjusting to the speed, they're adjusting to to everything to do with the weight above them. That doesn't get afforded to us in MMA. You have to go straight up and fight the champion. But now we've got a little opportunity here to fight for the title. And one of the kind of extra benefits, if you like, side benefits, is that we get to have that run at 205 before we take on someone with someone like John Jones and his pedigree.
So would you say the first fight will be, well, which is set to happen, would be the first one would be against Jan Blachowicz, and then the next fight after that, you reckon most probably is gonna be with John?
I'm not sure. Because why I'm not sure is because I think by then middleweight will need sorting out again.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think by the time the Blachowicz fights and all things going well, I think the middleweight division will be ready for Israel to defend again.
Yeah, because one of the things that Israel actually talks about a lot is not holding up the division.
Yeah.
So and he wants to stay active, which I think it kind of works out really well. Like if he can get, like, for example, 3 fights in next year, then that would be an ideal situation.
I think what's likely to happen is that Blachowicz cut weight down to middleweight, and then John Jones. That seems to be the way it's panning out. But I mean, it's all hearsay at the moment. It's in the very early stages. Yeah.
So yeah, with the moving on to like the boys in the UFC, we have you have a few other fighters as well. Brad Ridell, Dan Hooker, Kai Kara-France, Shane Young, and recently added into that list, Mr. Carlos Ulberg.
Yeah.
And well, I must say it was a really good performance as well on the Contender Series. What do you think of his performance? And
no, well, I mean, it was what we wanted. It's what we wanted. Look, our longer term plan for Carlos was not to be in the UFC this early.
Yeah,
we wanted to get him a little bit more experience. But the fact of the matter is, we're not going to get we're stuck, and we could be stuck for another 12 to 24 months, not being able to get Carlos out of the country to gain more experience. So we were like, look, give us this opportunity. Mick Maynard, the UFC matchmaker. I know I had said to you that I planned to do this a little later, but give us this opportunity now. The world's shut down. I know Carlos can compete at the highest level and give any of those top guys trouble. Give us this opportunity, and we took a punt, and it worked out for us. It was very nervous times for me, but
yeah, I could I saw the little bit of the footage of the recording of you guys and the team watching the fights, and I could see a little bit of that tension on your face, and especially you not being in that corner as well. Would you say it got to you a little bit?
100%. I hate it. I was nervous from the morning. Yeah, I was nervous from the morning. You already feel helpless when you're in a corner because you're not the person fighting now.
Inside the game.
Now you want to go in and you want to help the guy, beat the other guy up, but that's not the rules. Or you want to, or you think you can do a better job, but you can't. But you think, I can do a better job. You step out, I'll jump in. You feel helpless already, but you feel even more helpless when you're on the other side of the world watching a TV. You really feel like you can't do nothing.
Yeah, but one of the things that when I looked at like the interviews, the pre-fight, the hand wrapping and all that, I could see like a very high level of confidence on Carlos. Maybe not only confidence, but relaxed. He looked very calm and relaxed. Yeah,
and that's honestly, I think that's a relatively recent thing for Carlos. It's something I noticed, and I sent him a message, but when he was traveling to the venue, but he's a guy who introspects a lot. He's a guy who is very well learned. He studies the game. He asks me a lot of questions. He reads a lot of books, which is the perfect student. That's how you become the best fighter. You want to learn every little bit of information that you can. You want to grab every tiny little bit of knowledge, no matter where it comes from, as you can. He's that sort of guy. He won 2 King of the Ring titles.
Yeah, 2-time champion.
Yeah, and the first King of the Ring, I felt there was some lapses in his mentality there. Okay, he doubted himself, and he wasn't. There was times where his confidence was swaying, and we had to bring him back. Okay, and then in the second King of the Ring, he had completely dealt with that problem. It might have been maybe a year between the two.
Wow.
He strolled into that second king of the ring like a fighter should stroll into a fight. Nothing is going to stop him from achieving that goal. He was oozing it like it was coming out of his pores. Only one person was going to win that night, and nothing was going to stop him. No man, robot, no natural disaster. There was nothing that was going to stop Auberg from defending that King of the Ring title. And from where he came to the King of the Ring before that to that, he done a lot of work on his mentality. And now I text him. I said, remember that second King of the Ring? Remember your mentality? Take that into this contender fight. Oh. And he did. And he's got a strong mind now.
And even looking at that fight, and obviously he's had experience, but like in this MMA fight, that was probably his was that his third? I don't want to get that wrong.
No. The funny thing is, he's had 6 MMA fights.
Yeah.
6. Okay. We could only get 2 on the record.
Mm.
We managed to get 4 now, but there's still 2 missing.
Oh, okay.
The problem is, he had them back in the day when they were in some hall in Otara. No one records anything, but there is actual video of him physically in the cage fighting. Mm. He's had 6 fights, so it went from 2, then we got 4, and then 6. So he has got a bit of experience.
6 fights. So and he fought a reasonably experienced guy as well.
Yeah,
with he has quite a bit of experience in.
He has, but Carlos was fighting kickboxing in his weight division at the most elite level possible. He was fighting guys who were at the best in the world and beating some of them. Like that's a level of competition that other guy hasn't even been close to. That's something that my guys take, like Brad, Israel, Carlos. That's like, you can't just ignore that. Like, yes, that guy's had 8 pro fights, but Carlos had 20 kickboxing fights and not including anything he's done as an amateur, 20 kickboxing fights at the highest level in stadiums in Asia filled with 20,000 people.
Yeah. And that was the other thing, was when you watched that fight, for someone who might not know Carlos or might not have known what he has done, like, he made it look like that guy had, in a way I would say, had no business being in there with him. That was how I felt. He made it look.
Yeah. I mean, and in all honesty, if that guy was going to stand with Carlos like he was, then he had no business standing, I mean, that guy, we never got to find out, but he may be a better MMA fighter than Carlos. I don't know. He never tried to mix his game up. But if you stand with Carlos, who's stood with literally some of the best cruiserweights in the world, that's
definitely not going to work out very well for you. Moving on to Carlos, the other big one that's kind of cooking up right now is Mr. Junior Farr and his big mega fight with Joseph Parker.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one?
Look, I mean, I haven't mixed my words here. Like, we never had Joseph Parker on the horizon. We felt we needed probably another year, a couple more fights before we fought Joseph Parker. But that's not going to happen. It's similar to Carlos's situation. Like, we can wait around with the world shut down for Carlos to get into the UFC, or we should take this opportunity. It's no different to Junior. World shut down. We might not be fighting again for a year, 2 years even. So we're taking this opportunity, and we believe Junior can win. And we're putting together a plan. We're training Junior appropriately. And we're 100% in there to cause the upset. Like,
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think, like, causing that upset, because like the casuals or people who don't really study the game, and like, obviously, yes, nothing against Joseph Parker, but he's got some big following. He's very well known, and obviously the first thing that comes into mind when he's fighting someone else is everybody would jump on his side of things, and how so early on, a lot of people are, putting off Junior already. And I was like,
Yeah, but that's natural because Junior's the unknown entity and stuff. And Joseph Parker is a guy that's been around and fought at the highest level and had a lot of, he's our hero in New Zealand. Like, he's our only heavyweight champion ever. So, but it doesn't matter. Like, this is fighting. Like, this is boxing. Like, don't matter what the odds are, my friend. Like,
one punch can end the fight.
Yeah, this is a crazy sport. So, look, if we've got this opportunity, then we're going to do everything we can to try and make the most of it. That's all I know.
So, with obviously as an MMA gym, would you say you've taught Junior Fa a few other tricks, like maybe a flying knee, like the one that Bloods did just 2 weeks or last week or 2 weeks ago, or maybe some spinning back kicks?
Honestly, I've seen Junior a couple of times try to do a couple of kickboxing moves, and a couple of wrestling moves, and he's absolutely terrible. He needs,
So it's probably not a good idea if he wants to jump into kickboxing and
some guys can do it. Some guys can just transition really easily, but that big fridge ain't one of them.
The story with Junior as well, which he kind of posted this throwback photo of when he was still a boy with his afro and everything, and you guys have been training for a very long time.
Yeah. I tell you a story about that little person. Because I remember when he came into the gym, like when he just started coming to the gym, he obviously he stuck out because he was massive and he had a massive afro. And he used to come to the gym with like a little trail of like 4 little guys his own age, but obviously he was huge, so he stood out amongst them. So there were always like 4 little
minions.
Well, and the other thing that stuck about them is they were all 4 little white guys. Yeah. And he was this massive islander that was more than 2 times their height. And he used to stroll into the gym, and they always used to follow him with their little school bags and lunch boxes or whatever. And then it was like, what is this? This is the oddest group of young, like 14-year-olds or whatever I've seen. And I remember actually sparring him, and it might have been his first sparring, and he was quite nervous about it. First ever sparring. And I remember doing a couple of rounds with him, and I was like, he was a boy, right? So I was already had quite a few fights. So I got on the inside and I like give him, I roughed him up a little bit, but I was nice, obviously, because he was new. And then come 2 or 3 months later, I came across him again and sparred him again, and it was ridiculous. I couldn't even touch him.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was a kid with the reach that he has now, but he didn't know how to use it 2 or 3 months earlier. And in the space of 2 or 3 months, learning some of the basic fundamentals and learning to use his jab and stuff, I couldn't even barely touch the guy.
And this was when you guys were being trained at Lolo's gym.
We were both being trained out of Lolo's room.
Wow.
So like you can like imagine what that does for your ego, and a little kid is like moving and slipping and keeping on the end of his jab, and I'm already getting frustrated. And I beat the shit out of the kid 3 months earlier. It's like, but that just showed the talent, and I just remember that story. Yeah.
He one of the interesting ones was I don't want to name the person who told me this, but there was so obviously Junior and Joseph Parker fought a couple of times in the amateurs, and there was a fight which they had that it was held in one of the local clubs sort of thing, a very small space, and it was from what I was told, it was a controversial decision, and the decision actually went to Joseph Parker, and
well, I've only seen one of those fights.
Yeah.
And the one I saw, which is obviously I think the one you're referring to, 100% Joseph didn't win.
Yeah.
That's one thing I clearly remember.
Yeah.
Like at the end of it, you're like, man, that was
That's a bit weird.
Yeah, that
a
was
bit of a weird judging.
Like you can't. It's like fate. You can't fathom it. It's
Yeah.
like, man, what am I looking at, and what are the judges looking at? And the stadium, like it wasn't just me. It was everybody in the stadium. So I mean, that's not to say that some of the fights that Junior won weren't like that as well.
Yeah.
Because if you got to say to yourself, if that fight can go in Junior's and Joseph's favor like that, then it might have very well happened the other way if that's the quality of the judges. So, I mean, I remember that fight. It was at the ABA.
And was there a bit of an upset in the crowd as well? Like,
I think that naturally, like that was it was a decision that clearly Junior won. So when you get a decision like that and it doesn't go the way of the obvious person, then there's always going to be the odd bottle that flies across the air, whatever.
It was a bit more wild,
especially when you get the Tongans and the Samoans. When they get together in the same room, like
it gets a bit wild.
Yeah.
What do you think so far? What of Junior's progress and how it's going? Reckon it's going pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, physically and mentally, Junior's like in the right place. She's got a couple. There's still a couple loose ends that need to be tidied up, but that's to be expected this far out from the fight. This is an amazing fight because we've had the benefit of time in this fight. Like with a lot of fighters and professionals, and with some of Junior's other fights, we've been rushing the clock, but we've got a bit of time to keep doing a little bit of polishing.
Would you say this would be one of the biggest fights in recent times for boxing in the country?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because you basically have a David Tua there and Shane Cameron, which was massive, and then you have Joseph Parker and Andy Ruiz, and then you have this one. It's definitely top three. Where you place it amongst those top three
it varies.
It varies, and we're going to have to wait for the event and see what sort of a fight it is and how the event comes out. But it's up in the top three.
In that top three,
probably have to put it at 3 at the moment.
Yeah. I just want to go back a little bit. You were saying, talking about the managers that you are part of a management team.
Yep.
So you, Ash James, and Tim. Did I get it?
Well, yeah. So I mean, I have a very small management entity called Attain Peace Management. And
could I just ask about the where that name came from? Because it's a very unique name. So hey, you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.
I got together with the guys and I was like, what should we, you guys come up with a name for me? And then one of them came up with this Attain Peace name, which it used to be one of the key sayings of a fighter of ours, a very close friend of all of ours that passed away, named Jamie Vanderkool. And one of the sayings that he used to wear on his shorts and wear on his sleeve, to be honest, was Attain Peace. And what it meant, like what he meant by that is when he was fighting and training and living the fighter's lifestyle, that was his way of being peaceful, of finding peace within himself. So that's how he attained peace. And then when I found that name, it just really suited what I was looking for.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We've come to the section where I'm going to ask you, it's wise words from the wise man. So something that David Neath actually started. So if you could give advice for people who are watching this, and there are going to be a lot of people watching this because apparently you pull in a lot of numbers, Eugene.
I don't know why.
Fighters, non-fighters, what would be the best advice that you'd give them?
Up and coming fighters,
or non-fighters, whichever. It's
yeah. Look, my advice for up and coming fighters or people looking to be fighters, for a start, is you cannot put all your eggs in one basket in the sport. It's a very hard sport to get to the top of. Very, very hard. We're seeing a lot of success right now, but those guys are only the tip of the iceberg. Only a very, very small percentage get to the top. I'm not discouraging anybody out there to follow their dreams. Like, go 100% towards your dream. But one thing I am discouraging you to do is put everything into that one basket. While you're trying to become a fighter, have a job, have a part-time job, pursue other interests, upskill yourself, upskill your education, do all the necessary things that if fighting doesn't work out for you one day, you have something to fall back on. That's one of the key mistakes that I see young fellas making today, is that they live in a culture, in a social media culture, where they only get fed the end result. What they're seeing on social media is the jelly on top of the ice cream. They're just seeing that, but they're not seeing all the struggle before that. And it gives them this false sense of security that they can come in and quickly do this and quickly do that. And then all of a sudden they're going to look like this on Instagram. And nothing could be further from the truth. That's going to be my main advice for aspiring young fighters coming up.
That's actually really good advice. And I think it would help a lot of people because, in this day and age, like patience in this generation, patience is a problem. They seem to be lacking patience. They want things because of convenience. Everybody wants things fast, and nobody's willing to put in the hard yards and the years of work.
It's a problem. It's a problem, but you get a lot less and less of this at my gym because I definitely let people understand that you will get to a place if you're dedicated and committed where you can pursue this full time. But if you're not in that, I will let them know if they're not in that place right now. Like, if they're not in that place, then I will go out of my way to let them know. I'm like, brother, I love that you're at training and stuff, but you need to support yourself. You need to support
financially. And
100%. And it's just good it's part of the drive. It's part of what makes you get to where you want to get to, is that you have to work at McDonald's or you have to work at the gas station. It's part of what makes you get there. Like, Israel wouldn't be where he is today if he hadn't worked at the gas company and had to go and clock in every day at 9 and clock out every 5. And his life was dictated by his work. Okay? He didn't have the freedoms to do it. That developed him. That turned him into, turned him into the person who he is. If you take that out, if you sit around at home all day doing nothing and just waiting for training, you don't understand what the struggle is. You get given everything. Like, that can't be the way. That is not the best way that a fighter comes up through the sport. So
you've got to experience those struggles and adversities and just live that life to actually appreciate it when you don't have to, or when you reach a certain stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we go, this last one, Eugene, is there what will be on the top of your list for future plans?
Man, I honestly live my life. A lot of my life is looking into the immediate future because there's always a fight on the horizon. Yeah, but I think long term, it's to keep leveraging off this relationship that I have with the UFC and getting more guys into the UFC, more Kiwis, and not even necessarily my guys. I'm not talking about my guys. There's other great Kiwi fighters. My management company that I started was inundated with people, but unfortunately, my management company is for the guys at my gym. Like, I'm not in a space where I'm willing to take on people from outside of my gym. It's set up specifically for guys in my gym, but I've given all these fighters as best advice as I could regarding their futures and where I think they should go and what they need to do. And I've also said to all these guys, look, if it gets to the point where we need to push you into the UFC, then I will 100% do that for you. If you get yourself to that level, if you get yourself to that verge, I'll do that. I'll do that for free. I'll do that for nothing. That's just
part of growing the sport here
100%
in New Zealand, and breaking that barrier of entry, because it seems to be a lot harder for people from this side of the world to get into the UFC for some odd reason.
It's getting easier though. It's
Definitely.
getting easier.
Definitely.
I mean, we've through the hard work of the boys and the coaches and the gym,
they paved the way.
We've definitely been afforded a little bit of a privilege where, if I'm giving them a guy a name, they take it very, very seriously, because every guy we've ever given them is either in the top 10 or heading towards the top 10 or in an exciting fight, or is just a real guy, someone who brings some massive value to the company. Every single guy I've given them, right up to Carlos. 7 guys going from Alex Volkanovski up in Australia to Carlos Ulberg, the latest one, all some of the best fighters in the world. None of my guys are here to just fill in the numbers. So we've been afforded a little bit of respect in that regard. If I give them a name, they take it very, very seriously. And
which is also very important to mention is you don't give names if they haven't reached a certain level as well.
You can't, like, my reputation's at risk too. I can't just float. There's some great fighters in New Zealand, and I told a lot of these people that message me and stuff, like, I can't just inundate them with a whole lot of names that that I've got to be true to myself. If I don't think that you're ready to be in the UFC, then I'm not going to ruin my own reputation and send your name up there. Like, that's just not, like, let's keep our level high. Like, this is New Zealand. Look what we've done in the UFC. Every New Zealander that goes in there has to be at a super high standard, has to be able to go in there and be a world beater. That's the reputation that we want to maintain. That's the one we've got now. So, I can't just inundate them with a whole bunch of names and stuff. But I mean, we have some good fighters at the moment. If any one of them thinks they're at that level, they can ring me up and I'll reach out to the UFC myself for nothing. I've always been that way. I will always do that for them. Yeah.
Would you could you give us what you think will be, for your fighters, who will be the next or the next few who you reckon you'll be pushing to get into the UFC, or you're working towards them fighting in the UFC?
Well, honestly, I've got a whole bunch. I've got a whole bunch, but and I've got the bunch that I've got now. Like, we have so many goals amongst them that we have to achieve. Our goal, look, Kai was on the verge of being having a title shot. Things didn't go his way. Dan's number 5, and in a division where the champions left.
Yeah, our
job as his team is to deal with the UFC and put him in a position where we're 1 or 2 fights away from that title, which is, with Khabib leaving, is like very, very real possibility. Now, all the stuff behind closed doors has to go on to put him into that position, and then obviously we have to do the part where we win the fight.
Sorry, just to interrupt you there about since we're on the topic of Dan, I don't know how much you know about that new guy who just came in, the champion from Bellator, Michael Chandler.
Yeah.
Who came into the UFC, and he kind of got that shortcut straight to be a backup fighter for the title fight.
Yeah.
What are your opinions on that? Like, what do you think about that? Is it like, I mean, honestly, to me, I feel like it's not fair to the other people sitting in that top 5,
Yeah. Well, there's 2 sides to it. There's the part that is unfair. Yeah, but there's the part that this is a business. And you can't, don't hate the player, like hate the game. Like, he's taking advantage of the big following that he already had to put himself in a position that's not normally afforded to anybody else, and in a position that Dan's been working, the best part of his recent life for. But yeah, and that's the unfair part. That's unfair. People like Dan. But it's the business of the sport as well. Like, he had a massive following, came over, put himself in a position. Would I like to see Dan take that fight? Like, there's a part of me that says, like, stuff that guy. Like, he isn't proving anything. He doesn't deserve to fight Dan. The other part of me is like, man, Dan can give that guy a tremendous amount of trouble and send that guy back to where, and send that guy back to, back to wherever he came from.
Yeah.
So there's two sides to it, but I've benefited from the business side of the UFC as well. I've put Israel in positions that maybe he shouldn't be in. Maybe recent, with the Blachowicz one, maybe this is the case. Maybe it's not. Maybe if you're a champion, you do deserve to fight another champion. But yeah, you've got to understand the business side of the sport. And then you've got to, but it doesn't mean you can't also understand that there's a side of the sport that sometimes is a little bit unfair as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway, Eugene, I think that should be about time. I don't want to.
That's good.
You've got a spider to go to. I just want to say thank you very much, Eugene, for your time today, getting on the podcast with us. And I think a lot of people can benefit from this podcast. A lot to learn, a lot to pick up from up and coming fighters, or even just the general public. It's a lot to learn from there. So thank you very much, Eugene. And
no, brother, thank you. And thank you for following all the guys at the gym and girls. I know you did a podcast with Nyreen yesterday. So I know her one's probably going to come out before mine, but I'm really looking forward to seeing Nyreen's podcast. You've got to do one with Gina G.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, another fighter from
on
the gym.
list.
And you got to do one with Sanchai Ong. I think those are guys.
Ooh,
the thing is,
Sanchai.
like, these are names. Like, everybody knows the big names at the gym, but some of the up and coming guys are the guys that we don't know about at the gym. They have even more fascinating stories than those guys. And what I like about it, what I like about this podcast, is you're venturing into some of those lesser well-known fighters, and people are finding out like how interesting those people's journeys have been, because some of them have been really interesting journeys, and it's so fascinating for me, and I think it'll be fascinating for the audience as well.
Yeah, that's one of the other things as well. When I was doing it, is not to is to go into the stories of this lesser known fighters who haven't really made it yet, or who don't have that exposure, who don't have the reach and stuff like that. And some of them have, like, as what we mentioned, like Gina, and the stories that they have is incredible.
I'm sure Nyreen has a brilliant story
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so that was like, one of the things I wanted to do. Of course, everyone wants to do the Israel and the Dan.
I'm telling you, like, Kiwi fighters, bro, Kiwi fighters have to be so resilient and so resourceful in this small corner of the earth. You have to do there's so many things that you have to go through to be a professional fighter here that you don't have to go through in other countries.
That's it.
All the traveling, there's no money in the sport, there's no infrastructure, there's no high performance sport, there's no grants, there's nothing here. Like, you have to go through so much adversity, and you have to be so resilient that it just creates this fascinating story about struggle, about traveling the world, trying to, like, make a living for yourself. That's why there's such great stories, brother.
Definitely. All right, Eugene, thank you very much. All right, that's us, guys. See you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you on the next one.